Welcome to Illustration and Media Digital Applications. This is Module 4, Unit 4.1, Parallel Projection, Exporting, and Formatting. Today, we'll be creating two-dimensional plans and elevations. We'll be learning how to add effects to our drawings. Finally, we'll be exporting two-dimensional graphics. I'm Sherry McKinley. Let's get started. So for today's lesson, we're going to be using last week's model, the model that we were using to do the section plane command and to add text and dimensions. Now we're going to be adding on to that this week, and a bit of review to start out with. We are starting out with parallel projection as our command for today, but to do that, I'm going to ask everyone to just practice that section plane command under the Tools menu, and what I would like for us to do is start out with a top view section cut. So let's click there in our model. And we're going to get that large section plane that we're quite used to. And so we're going to go to our select tool and choose it. And let's move it a little bit. Till we are satisfied with its location. I'm going to stop mine there. Now, if your text and dimensions are on like mine are, let's go ahead under the window menu where we have our layers, and let's turn off our dimensions and our text so that they're not a part of doing our next piece to this, our next section for this tutorial. Now, we also know that if we go to the camera menu and we go to standard views and go to the top, that would be our next step there. And of course, we are going to toggle off our section plane so we have a nice plan in front of us. Now, what you will notice about our plan or our top view is that it's slightly three-dimensional, and if my walls were a lot taller, I would really see that effect. So it's not really a perfect plan, and sometimes we want it to be a perfect plan. So we're going to learn how to do that. You can actually take a three-dimensional model and cut it to a place where it's going to look like it's either 3D, maybe in one view, or completely two-dimensional in another view. Where you're going to do that is under the camera menu. And you'll notice that perspective is the one that is selected right now. Now you have two choices here. Perspective is what we've been working in so far, and I would recommend that you continue to work in the perspective view. But when I do want to create a two-dimensional view of my drawing, I'm going to take that and instead I'm going to check parallel projection, which is what that means. Don't work in parallel projection because your drawing is going to look like it's off or the walls are a little bit strange, but I am going to choose that to flatten out my drawing. Now watch the screen while I do this. The minute I choose it, it completely flattened out. So all of those three-dimensional walls now are instead a cut line, or it's a section cut because that's where my drawing has been cut. A perfectly two-dimensional plan. And what I'm going to do to finish that off now that it's in two dimensions is I'm going to go to the window menu and to my layers and select a new, I'm going to create a new layer here, clicking on my plus sign, and I'm going to type in floor plan dims for dimensions, make it the current layer, and close. So I'm going to put a few dimensions on this plan, and I do like to keep all of my dimensions in different layers depending on the view that I'm in, because these dimensions will stay going the direction of the plan. And later I'm going to create a dimension layer for my elevation in parallel projection. So I'm going to click from here, and then I'm going to click the endpoint here, and I'm going to place that there. And I'm going to do another one here. It's a nice little dimension. Just trying to find some endpoints. And you can add as many as you like. Okay, when that is complete and my drawing is the way that I want for it to look, I'm going to take us now to the next part of today's lesson, and that is to export out this file as a two-dimensional graphic or a JPEG file. Now what that enables me to do is have basically a photograph of what's on my screen that can later be inserted into a PowerPoint presentation or movie making software or any other software that will accept JPEG views. So we're going to go ahead and export out a 2D graphic right now of whatever we see on our screen. So let's make sure that we like the view. So I'm going to zoom a window a little bit closer to my work. Okay, and whatever's on this screen is exactly what I will end up seeing in my photograph. And certainly, whether it's in PowerPoint or in Word, the newer versions of Word and the newer versions of PowerPoint, or it could be in Photoshop, but certainly we can remove the background later once it's imported into other software. So to export or to save out a 2D graphic, we're going to the File menu, we're selecting Export, and we're going to choose where it says 2D graphic. Just remember that location. This is not a save as. You won't find a JPEG option in the save as menu here, so it is export that we have to do. And it keeps our SketchUp file as one file, and it exports out a snapshot essentially of what we see on our screen. So I'm going to go ahead and choose export 2D graphic, and a window will appear for me, giving me a few options. Now it's important that we have good file management, and I usually, I've been saving everything to an external drive and keeping temporary things on my desktop. Some people like to work within their documents folder and then create new folders, but do have good file management, because when you get working with this kind of software a lot, you're gonna end up with a lot of images that you need to keep organized. So I'm going to save this one to my desktop, and I'm just going to call it test or something, because I'm not going to be needing it later. You might want to give it a name by calling it the unit number that we're in today so that you can save this for yourself. So I'll call that test, save it to my desktop, and the next thing I want to make sure is what kind of a file do I want to save it as. And you'll notice that you have various options. Now I'm going to recommend that we do a JPEG file. It won't take up too much room then. It's typical picture file, and we're going to go ahead and click export. Now we're going to backtrack a little bit here so that we can, get ourselves back to a place where we're looking at our model again. The first thing I want us to do is to turn off the layer called Floor Plan Dims so that we don't have that there anymore. To do that, we're going to need to make another layer current so that we can uncheck that box, and those dimensions will go away. Okay, that just took a second. And the next thing we want to do is toggle on our section plane so we can see that. Then we'll select that section plane, and I'm going to get us to delete it for now. We also want to make sure that all of those layers with our text and everything, that is also off. And finally, we're backtracking with the camera menu, moving ourselves from parallel projection back into perspective. So just remember those steps. We need to turn back on our section plane and delete it. We need to go back into the perspective view, turn off the layers that we don't want there. And next, we're going to create an elevation. Now I'm just going to go ahead and do this. Enjoy the music, follow along with me. This is a little bit of review, but doing everything we just did, we're going to do it again. Here we go. For the final part of today's tutorial, we're going to be looking at shadows, and this is the part of today's lesson called formatting your drawing, I guess. And this really is just about adding some effects to our drawing. We're talking more over the next two lessons about how we can produce line drawings, take off outlines, and things like that. But for today, we're focusing only on two parts of the formatting. And the first one is, under the View menu, our edges. And you'll notice that edges are very important to have on in your drawing while you're working, so make a note of that. You always want to work with your edges on. Otherwise, it's difficult, impossible really, to snap to corners and things that you need to for drawing new items or for adding dimensions. So we do want to work with our edges on. But if we do want to have the most realistic perspective in SketchUp, prior to using the plugins that we'll be using in a few weeks, we can turn these edges off. So under the View menu, Edge Style, if you have additional edges selected, you can turn them all off and then take a look at the effect of that. So that's a little bit better. We don't normally have things outlined in real life, so let's keep it like that for now. The second thing that we can do to make the effect a little bit nicer is to turn shadows on. Now you'll notice under the View menu, there is a shadows option. I'm going to click it and that will toggle my shadows on. And I never know what effect I'm going to get just yet, but I like to see what will happen initially. Now we do also want to make a note that shadows should never be on while you're working, because it will be about 10 times the speed, slower, 10 times slower than it is when the shadows are off. So only turn them on at the very end, right before you want to export out something from your screen. Now, if I don't like how my shadows are looking, I can go to my Window menu, which we know is really a location that has a lot of settings for my drawing, and shadows is one of those settings. And so under the Window menu, we're going to select Shadows. And this is a spot where I can actually change the time of day or change the time of the year to make my shadows look the way that I want them to look. It just changes the direction of the sun or the light. And when I feel like it's the best look for this space, for me, I look for the most shadows I can get on the floor. That's pretty good. Then I can close out that window. Now, you'll notice that I did zoom in to my space in 3 dimensions, removed the parallel projection, and I got into my space so I don't see any sort of SketchUp green or sky. I'm zoomed in close enough so that it looks like I'm actually in the space. So this would be a decent perspective to export. So I'm going to go ahead and export out that file and save that one as well.